In my country of Malaysia, there's a very dirty C word that you cannot mention in polite society. And no, it's not that delicious four-letter C word. It's not this moist, succulent thing that smells remotely of abalone and looks like abalone that you consume with your tongue. No, not that. But it's also a rather unacceptable word nonetheless. The word that I'm going to mention is something even more unacceptable in Malaysian society. This word that I'm about to mention is as socially unacceptable to say in Malaysia as it is to say the word Voldemort in Hogwarts. What word is that, you might wonder? Well, the word is communism. Yes, that is the dirty C word. So recently, one of our members of parliament from the reactionary UMNO party, United Malays National Organisation, was accused by a fellow reactionary from the PAS party of spreading communist ideology in Malaysia. Now, I don't know what sort of mental gymnastics you'd have to perform in order to in any way deduce that UMNO is in any shape or form a communist party, considering that it is, after all, the neo-feudal party that was born out of the destruction of feudalism and the introduction of capitalism. But before we start today's video, I'd like to say, if you enjoy my channel, please go and subscribe. It doesn't cost you any money, guys. My channel is public property, watch it, but do subscribe as it helps with the algorithm, and do spread my video around if you like my channel. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, to my subscribers from outside the country, those who are not familiar with the Malaysian political landscape, UMNO, or United Malays National Organisation, is one of the GOP parties, or Grand Old Parties of Malaysia, next to MCA, the Malaysian Chinese Association, and MIC, Malaysian Indian Congress, which form the Barisan Nasional, which is basically the old guard of Malaysian reactionary politics. Now, this party is basically comprised of the descendants of feudal lords who matriculated into the capitalist class after the fall of feudalism. So some of the famous members of UMNO would be, for example, people like our first Prime Minister, Tunku Abdul Rahman, as well as most of the Prime Ministers of Malaysia. So the fact of the matter is that this video is not to create a moralistic argument against UMNO or against MCA or MIC. They are reactionary parties, no doubt, but I think for an UMNO man to be called a communist is as insulting as it would be for a communist, an actual communist, to be compared to somebody from UMNO. But then again, nothing in this country shocks me anymore. And, you know, at this point, the C word, the dirty C word, has turned into the boogeyman used by politicians on every side of the political aisle in order to attack their political opponents. Yes, in most countries, for example, the United States, to be called a fascist or is considered a grave insult. But in Malaysia, to be called a communist is basically like being called a fascist in a Western country. So why does the C word frighten Malaysians of all races so much? It's not just the Malay Muslims who are frightened of the C word. Malaysians of every single race are really, really frightened of the C word because they have been indoctrinated by our system to believe that communism, rather than simply being an economic system, is a evil political ideology. And it's not their fault. The 40-year jungle war that Chin Peng, the communist leader, fought against the government of Malaysia was indeed something that caused mass suffering and mass destruction, which did not leave a very nice taste in the mouth of people who suffered as a result of collateral damage. But you can't doubt, you can't deny that years and years and years of British propaganda and post-colonial propaganda has also filled the minds of Malaysians with this fearsome boogeyman, you know, the gun-toting in the gorilla in the jungle who's going to shoot you if you disagree with him. That is the impression that people have of communists, unfortunately. So what exactly happened was UMNO's Puat Zakashi, the UMNO leader Puat Zakashi, took a study trip to China recently in order to learn from China's technological advancements. Now, the purpose of visiting China was in no shape or form meant to learn Marxist ideology or to study Leninist thinking in any way. But the political rival of Mr. Zakashi took this as an opportunity to smear him with a red coat of paint by saying, he went to China on a study trip because he wanted to spread communist ideology back to Malaysia. Now, if only that were true, the leftists would be delighted. But to be very frank with you, I don't think that most Malaysian reactionaries have an understanding of what communism really is. Because they even called Lim Guan a communist. Now, Lim Guan is a member of the DAP party, which is a social democrat party. You know, the sort of people who had Rosa Luxemburg shot. Yes. So, I don't know how anyone in their right mind could ever come to the conclusion that Lim Guan was a communist. That's insulting to actual communists, considering that the people in DAP, are quite palpably reactionary, bourgeois social democrats. I mean, how anyone can arrive at the conclusion that Lim Guan is a communist is absurd to me. I mean, that's like calling Bernie Sanders a communist. Yeah, but considering that the certain members of the PAS party actually believe that Lee Kuan Yew, the so-called cousin of Lim Kit Siang, Lim Guan Eng's father, is a communist. Well, I guess they can believe anything in the world, can't they? Even though Lee Kuan Yew was quite palpably a reactionary who crushed the communist movement in Singapore. Wouldn't it not only be very insulting to Lee Kuan Yew to be called a communist, it would also be very insulting to the actual communists who were locked up by Lee Kuan Yew in Operation Cold Storm. And of course, yours truly has also been labeled a communist by certain unhappy Malaysian reactionaries who seem to think that I share some kind of ideology with Chin Peng. But I can assure you I'm not a communist. I don't have the discipline to struggle in the jungle for my beliefs. I don't have the discipline to even sit down and read a book. So what makes you think I'm going to pick up a gun and struggle in the jungle for my beliefs? I'm just a street punk with a camera phone. That's all, trying to speak his piece. I can assure you, I'm not a communist. I don't have the discipline to struggle in the jungle for my beliefs. I don't even have the discipline to sit down for more than 5 minutes and read a book. I'm just an uneducated ignoramus with a camera phone. Yes. I myself have attempted to read Marx, but frankly I find his writing boring. As dry as Ben Shapiro's wife, to be honest. So no, you don't have to worry about me spreading Marxist ideology to the Malaysian masses when I find Marx and Lenin to be quite dull, as boring as watching paint dry, frankly. But I understand, of course, that the C word in Malaysia is used as a political insult, isn't it? But having said that, however, I do encourage Malaysians not to just blindly parrot slogans that they've heard from the boomers or from political leaders, and to basically just, if you're interested, just explore theories that may seem taboo. Don't be afraid of the C word, okay? The people who still parrot the C word are basically fighting 20th century battles in the 21st century. Look, we are in a semi-developed country. There's hardly any jungle left. Well, there's a little bit of jungle left, but there's no way that anyone in their right mind, not even a Marxist in their right mind, would ever consider launching an armed struggle against the government, because the material conditions are simply not suitable for such a pursuit. I understand that Malaysia's brutal 40-year jungle war with the communists that led to intense collateral damage, and Singapore's brutal crackdown of the communists has led many people to feel very, very frightened of that word. But I assure you, it is simply a political ideology. Or, let me rephrase that. I assure you, it is simply an economic system. A mode of production, if you will. Nothing more than that, okay? So then, which system do I believe in? Capitalism or communism, if I'm not a communist? Well, my answer to that question is a question in itself. Do we really have to choose? Do we really have to choose Marxism or laissez-faire capitalism? Because that seems to be the binary choice that you are imposing on me. No, I don't claim to know all the answers, and I don't claim I know what's the best political system for the people of Malaysia. But if you were to ask me for my ideology, if I'm not a capitalist supporter or a Marxist, what am I? Well, I always say I describe myself as a J.B. Priestley sort of socialist, or an Oscar Wilde sort of socialist. Classical British socialist, if you will. J.B. Priestley was the writer who wrote this book, the play, of Cold and Inspector Coles. The closest thing to my ideology is J.B. Priestley's ideology. In fact, I have more in common with J.B. Priestley than I do with Karl Marx. I'm not saying you can't read Karl Marx. I'm willing to work with Marxists, but understand that my ideology is not Marxism. It's more like classical British socialism. Call it Fabian socialism, if you will. But yes, I want a society that's not only fair, but compassionate, where the strong look after the weak, and the strong have a moral obligation to take care of the weak. Whichever political ideology gets me to that society, I will support. But clearly, laissez-faire capitalism is not going to get us to that society. So that's why I do not support capitalism. Now, will Marxism stand the test of time and actually be proven to be true in future? I don't know, because nobody's actually tried Marxism. Nobody's actually tried a classless, stateless society. But we shall see. Whether the cat is black or white, it doesn't really matter to me. as long as it catches rats in the first place. So likewise, it doesn't really matter to me which political system we have, as long as it's the most compassionate and it serves the most number of people's needs. It serves everyone's needs. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. And go before you slag anyone with the label communist, just learn up what a communist really is. Okay? Thank you. Have a nice day.